Hey YouTube, it's me again, Dr. J, back for video number 6, and this is Homeschooling 106, Beyond the Basics. Now, in the last video, I talked about the basics and my love of the basics. That was my version of the 3 R's, which was reading comprehension and understanding, and communication, oral and written, and mathematics, which goes beyond arithmetic. And now I'm going to talk about beyond the basics because the basics are important and foundational, and if you don't do anything else in your homeschool, as long as you do the basics, your child is going to be fine. But there's also a time when we go beyond the basics, and beyond the basics, it's those things that are traditional, like social studies and science and health and all those things that are more traditional on transcripts, and other things is like architecture or coding or sewing or it's basically anything beyond kind of those 3 R's that I talked about. And this is one area that I think that we as homeschool parents, a lot of times we kind of overdo or underdo. And sometimes we overdo beyond the basics when we aren't strong in the basics or our kids aren't strong in the basics, and we try to compensate for that by saying, okay, well, yeah, you're not strong in math or you're not strong in comprehension, but you draw so well, just go draw, or you dance so well, just go dance, or you make good maps, so just go do maps. And we can't go beyond the basics at the expense of the basics. Like we can't just have cake and ice cream and not eat our vegetables. And the basics are vegetables, but beyond the basics is what makes the vegetables palatable, especially if your child doesn't necessarily have a love affair with reading or math or writing. Then you really want to make sure that you have those other things that your child can really grow with and really find their place in. But at the same time, if you just feed them dessert, they're just they're gonna be sick and hate you, and that's pretty much what happens. And this is something that I talk about, that I see a lot as a professor, is that so many people were told, oh, you can be whatever you want to be, you can do whatever you want to do, but because they don't have the strong foundation in the basics, they can't be what they want to be because they don't have the basics upon the foundation upon which those other things are built. One example of that is, y'all know I just got off vacation, so I got vacation on the brain. But my kids, they got to meet the production cast. So those are the singers and dancers that do the shows on the cruise ship, and we did a question and answer session with them, and it was amazing because every single person that was in the cast, except for one person, but all but one of the people in the cast had a bachelor's degree in fine arts or dance or theater or something like that. And you're sitting back and you're going, you're just watching the show. You're like, wow, that person can dance and that person can sing. And you're thinking that it was just those talents that got them where they are. But it was also like, these are not just people where, oh, it's just raw talent. It wasn't just raw talent. They also have degrees in their field. And sometimes, that's not something that we see always in the forefront. The same was true for a lot of the staff in various areas. Where you might not think about that being a degree area, but it really was a degree area. I know I met a staff member on a cruise a few years ago. My husband and I was talking to this, he's a bartender. We were just kind of, having conversation, and he talked about he had a degree in entertainment tourism or something like that. He was from South Africa, and there, he had a degree from university that was a adventure tourism degree. And so, you just didn't think about it, but it's like, if you don't have the basics and the foundation set to get through university, then they wouldn't have been able to make a career and do the thing that they love. Like, a lot of people just kind of focus on kind of the stars that stick out in our mind, and they'll say, oh, Beyonce don't have a degree and she's making a lot of money, or Bill Gates didn't finish college, or and that might be true for those people, but the reason why we know their names is because they're rare. But most of us, we're not Bill Gates, we're not Beyonce, we're not LeBron James, where we're just going to be drafted right out of high school or anything like that. We have to be able to compete with the masses, because we're not elite. I mean, that's what makes the elite is that they're rare. And I'm not an elite person. So you know so I had to be able to build upon the foundation that I had in order to be able to weave my way through life. And that's what most people have to do. That's what probably 99% of the population has to roll with the punches and have that foundation set. And then there's that lucky 1% who somebody just spots them when they're 12 and says, you're the America's Next Top Model, and that's it. But for most of us, that's not going to be the story of our lives, and for most of our children, that's not going to be the story of their lives. So we do have to make sure that that foundation is set. But if you only do the foundation, then your kids won't know what they're good at. I there have been so many things that I've introduced to my kids that they ended up falling in love with, and they wouldn't have known about it. Like, and it's not even just academics. I know my kids, they love track, but that was my idea. I was like, hey, hey, let's see how they do with track. They had always been doing like 5K races and stuff like that. So I said, they may really like track and field. And so we took them out to look at a team, and they ran for the coaches and stuff, and they were like, oh yeah, we can work with them, and my kids love it. But they would not, that's not something they would have really known about or embraced if I hadn't brought it up to them. The same thing with a lot of things, and some things I brought up to them, it did not go over. When they were younger, karate, that they were not interested. They were not interested in that. Gymnastics, that was something that they got introduced to when they were younger, and they were like not a fan. But after they started dance, and especially like jazz and hip hop, and they do a lot of acrobatics and that's when the twins decided they wanted to go back to gymnastics and do like trampoline and tumbling, so they could do more acrobatics in their dance. And so those were things, if I hadn't had put that beyond the basic out there, they wouldn't know that that was part of the smorgasbord that they could choose from. My kids have done courses in robotics, various types of robotics, in various robotic systems, coding in various languages and stuff like that, electronics, all that sort of stuff. That's beyond the basics, and it's really just about throwing a whole bunch of stuff at them and seeing what sticks. Not because I am trying to determine their future, but because, how can you be what you can't name? You can't be something that you don't know anything about. And I see that a lot with my college students. They will, come to college and they have picked a major because, everybody in my family is a teacher, so I want to be a teacher. Or, the only job that I know that works with numbers is architects or accountants, so I want to be an accountant, and it's like they were drawing stuff out of a hat because they didn't even know the types of things that were available to them. And I didn't want that for my kids. I wanted my kids to be able to, when they're adults, make informed decisions about what they want. And I wanted to do that by giving them these little micro experiences as kids. That's one reason why I don't let my kids just, like Speedster, he's very clear in what he wants to do as a 10-year-old, what he thinks he wants to do later in life. Salamander has been my most solid one. I mean, Salamander has not deviated since he was 4 years old. He said, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to be. And he has not deviated from that. And I really believe that what he has declared he wants to do, I really believe that that's what he's going to be in that area when he's an adult. That's going to be his field. But that doesn't mean that he's not going to get exposure to about 1,000 other things, because, lots of things can can happen in life. Like, you know, the field that he wants to go into, he has to be, physically um, capable of doing that. So if something were to happen and, he lost the ability to walk, okay, well, you may not be able to do that, but, hey, I've also exposed you to coding. And so you maybe can't be an architectural engineer, but you can be a coder, and you can develop, software that works. You can be attached to that field, even if you can't do that job. Even if you can't be the one out there who's building the spaces that you design and all that other kind of stuff. You can still be attached to that field that you love because I've given you these other things that you can draw upon. Another reason why I'm so big on Beyond the Basics is because the field that I was in before I came home to homeschool and just focus on teaching, it didn't exist when I was in high school. Like when I was in high school, I couldn't have said, this is what I want, this is the career I want to go into, because that area did not exist. There was no, um, there may have been a couple colleges in the country that had that major. So I didn't even major in that when I was in school because it was such a new field. And so I loved it. I loved what I was doing, but it wouldn't have been available to me if I didn't have all these other things. Like it just so happened that all of my degree areas, which seemed really far-fetched and not connected with each other, they made this really great soup where they fit perfectly with the area that I wanted to go into, that I ended up going into. And it was like, hey, if I were going to put all these things together to create this field, this is what I would have done. Um, so I don't know what the world is going to look like when my kids are adults. I mean, the world is changing so fast that I don't want to say this is what you want to do, so we're going to focus on that, and then all of a sudden, when they're 30, that technology doesn't even exist anymore, or those things don't even exist anymore. Somebody at one point was the absolute best, whip and buggy builder in the world, and yeah, they got nothing, now because that doesn't exist. And somebody else, just got rich by building an app when app development was not on my radar. When I was a kid, and I'm only 40. I say only 40 as if that's not old, but that might be old to some people. But the point is, I don't know what the future holds, and my kids don't know what the future holds, and so I don't want to pigeonhole them into this world that only I can see, when the world may be completely different than what I can even imagine it will be, 10, 15, 20 years from now. And I know it's going to be completely different 30 years from now than it is today when my kids are 40. And so I have to not just prepare them for the world as it exists, but I also have to give them skills that may help them in what that world is going to look like later. So that's why I'm such a big fan of going beyond the basics, not in spite of the basics, but building upon those basics, having those basics as the foundation, but going beyond that. And even, introducing your kids to things that, they might not even think they love. Like, I've made my kids do art. They've taken art classes at museums that were taught by actual artists. We have books. We have tons of art supplies. They're not the biggest art fans, but I still think that is important. They've done some stuff with different music genres. They love jazz and classical and all that kind of stuff. But jazz and but they're not the biggest fan. They don't love classical. But I introduced them to classical so that they can make an informed decision on if they loved it or not. They do kind of have their mom's love of country because they used to be the biggest fans of Hee Haw because I introduced it to them. Yes. Really. But the world is big. The world is so big. There's so much out there, and your child doesn't know how big the world is at 8 or 10 or 12 or even 17. They still don't know how big the world is. And one of the things that you have that no one can take from you, it doesn't matter how much education you have, doesn't matter how much experience you have as a homeschooler, doesn't matter how many children you have, what you have that nobody can take from you is life experience, in this world that you can offer your kids that they don't have yet. And Showing them how big the world is, even if that bigness is new to you. Still go beyond your comfort zone and introduce them to things, even if you have to contract that stuff out, whether it be free classes at your museum or library or something like that, whether it be paid contracting out, whatever. And make the world big for them. Don't make the world small, and please don't make it too narrow for them, because the world is going to change so much. I mean, this is going to be their world in a few years, and we're just going to be sitting back with the memories. So let it be as big for them as it needs to be. I hope this helps. This is Dr. J, and I'm out. Bye-bye.